Hi, my name is Kathy, and I'm happy to be sharing my faith reflection with you today. I hope that my story can give you some hope, some inspiration, and maybe help in some way. My story begins with my husband Patrick, who was diagnosed with a very serious, life-threatening, progressive lung disease about 5 years ago. Patrick had been seeing a doctor for some nodules in his lungs. The nodules did not pose a problem for him, but the doctors continued to check them. And in the process of checking the nodules in his lungs, they found some scarring. We didn't know what scarring in the lungs meant, and the doctors didn't say that it was anything serious. For that reason, I had not been going to the doctor visits with Patrick. But in April of 2015, when he was scheduled for a follow-up to the most recent CAT scan, something told me that I needed to go. Looking back, I think that it was God nudging me and telling me that I needed to be there. At the doctor visit, we discovered that the scarring had increased in his lungs. The doctor said that he might need to think about going on oxygen at some point and that he should probably do a biopsy, but we could wait about 6 months to a year. When we left the doctor's office, I did not feel comfortable, and I felt that there was more to this than we were being led to believe. And I knew that we needed to seek a second opinion. We did seek a second opinion, and we ended up at Columbia Presbyterian in New York. We had a wonderful doctor there, and within 3 months, Patrick had a biopsy, a diagnosis, and a treatment plan. Patrick was diagnosed with IPF, which is idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. It is scarring of the lungs, but with no known cause. We continued to see the doctor at Columbia Presbyterian, and Patrick was learning to live with the disease that he had. He actually had the disease for a lot longer than we knew. Patrick continued to get treated to hopefully slow down the scarring that was in his lungs. He went through a lot of testing. And as you can imagine, at this time, being faced with a diagnosis that could potentially end your life was very difficult for us to get through. We have an incredible amount of faith, but at that moment, we knew that we needed a lot more faith than we actually had. We knew we could do it, but we knew it was going to be a long road. At the time, Patrick was still living his normal life, working, but he eventually did need to go on oxygen, and he became very sick. I became his caregiver. We made frequent trips to Columbia, and it was a very difficult time in our lives. Our lives had changed drastically, and we didn't know what was to come of this. It was a time in our lives where we completely needed to rely on God. And we did just that. It wasn't easy, but we knew we had to face this. We didn't have a choice. After about 6 months, the doctor said to us that Patrick's only chance at returning to a healthy life was to have a lung transplant, a double lung transplant. And I thought, how do you even do that? It just sounded so serious to me. And I didn't know how we were going to get through this and face this. I think I knew in my heart that God would get us through it. But when you hear news like that, it really makes you stop and think. And we had a very difficult time with hearing that news. A transplant is not for everyone, but we knew this is the road that we had to take. If Patrick was going to continue to live his life, this was our only hope. We knew that God would be there with us, but the days were still a struggle. We had to tell our family. We have 2 boys who at the time were in their 20s and did not live at home with us. We had to let them know what was happening with their dad, and we had to tell the rest of our family that this is what we were facing. There was not any time during this that Patrick said, "Why me?" He faced it with a positive attitude every single day. His faith never wavered. He knew that God would be there with him no matter what. So we had to start our journey for the lung transplant. We ended up at a different hospital. We ended up at Duke University Medical Center in North Carolina. We had family there, so we knew that we could do this because they would be with us every step of the way. We had to relocate to North Carolina, and so began the journey. In May of 2017, we did relocate to North Carolina, and Patrick went through the evaluation at Duke for a transplant, and he was eventually put on a transplant list. He was put on the list on May 18th of 2017, and on May 19th of 2017, he got a call that they had found lungs for him. So this started a whole new part of this journey where we had to face the fact that Patrick was going to undergo this extremely serious surgery. There was a chance that he might not make it because of the seriousness of it. It is not something that the doctors and surgeons easily do, but we knew that this was our only chance for Patrick to have a life. And we had decided that we were going to do anything and everything possible to have the best possible outcome for this. And again, we knew that God was with us. There wasn't a day that he wasn't. And that is how we got through. So Patrick did go to the hospital that day, and he was put in a room to wait to see if in fact the lungs that were there were an actual fit for him. And we waited a few hours, and he did get the call that it was a go. And I can't put into words what the feelings were at that time. Here we were, put into this place in our lives that we had no idea how it was going to affect us, and we're put into the storm, but not knowing how we're going to get out of it. And it was a huge leap of faith for us to take this on. A transplant is not for everyone, and the outcome might not be good, but we knew we had to do this. So Patrick had to then make the two most difficult phone calls of his life. He had to call our boys and tell them that it was a go, but this might be the last time I ever speak to you. And that was extremely difficult. But Patrick was okay with whatever was going to happen. He knew that God would be with him no matter what the outcome. If he didn't make it, he was okay with that. He was okay with God's plan. So he went into surgery. They whisked him away, and he went into surgery, and he had his lungs taken out, and he had new lungs put in. The surgery was a complete success, and Patrick woke up to the sight of his two boys at the foot of his bed, and he said to himself, I made it. I made it. He might not have made it, and so that was a difficult thing, but he hung on to his faith and to God's hand through the whole journey. We all did. We had an incredible support with love from our family and our friends, and we saw God in this every single day, with the people that were put in front of us, with what happened, with how it went, the whole progression of it. There wasn't a moment where we thought that God wasn't with us. So Patrick got out of ICU in a day. 14 days, he was out of the hospital after having a double lung transplant. Patrick now, 3 years later, lives a wonderful life. We are extremely blessed. We've been in touch with the donor family, and they lost their son. But because of their son's decision, Patrick has a life. It's a very different life, but it's a life. And we are extremely grateful each and every day for all that we have, and for all that God has given us, and for the time that God held our hands and walked on this journey with us. We don't know what's to come. Patrick faces many adversities as a transplant patient, but we know we are blessed and that God continues to walk with us. We have that extreme amount of faith for each and every day. And Patrick has to face every day with an incredible amount of faith. This journey continues, and we look for the blessings in it because there are so many. As hard as it was, as difficult as it became, there are so many blessings that we've been given, and we look for the good in it every day. I want to thank you for listening to my story. I hope that it has inspired you in some way. I want to thank Sister Pat and Amy for allowing me to share the story. And I want to wish many, many blessings on all of you as we endure these most difficult times. Know that God is there for you, and that your faith is all you need. Thank you so much.